Eggs, when Kamala Harris took office, were short of $1.50 a dozen. Now a dozen eggs will cost you around $4 thanks to Kamala Harris's inflationary policies. Pennsylvania actually has seen some of the worst grocery price increases of the entire nation. And again, it's because she cast the deciding vote on the Inflation Explosion Act. I think we want Pennsylvanians to be able to afford groceries. We want our young families to be able to buy food at a reasonable price at the grocery store. And the only way to do that is to get back to common sense economic policies and fire Kamala Harris. This is a person who's presided over a $1,000 increase in monthly expenses. Just to afford the same life you could have afforded 3.5 years ago, it costs you over $1,000 a month here in Pennsylvania. We can do so much better. We certainly will. And as the father of a couple of kids who eat a whole lot, we certainly need to do better for the next generation. God bless you guys.
There is nothing that pisses off America's leadership class. There's nothing that angers Kamala Harris more than when a working class person in the heartland of this country complains about what a bad job she's doing. And when you think about, this charge that our leaders constantly make, they'll say, well, you don't want 20,000 low-wage migrants showing up in your town. You don't want to be evicted from your home to make way for 4 Haitian families who, by the way, are violating zoning laws to live in this house. You're a racist. That's what they'll say. Now think about this. What they're really doing is saying you are not allowed to speak up about our leadership screwing up. And when you realize this is the game that they play, I mean, look, you and I agree with this. I think we should genuinely endeavor to look at every human being as a child of God, whether they're black, white, brown, or anything else. I think that is an absolutely good principle. When our leaders call working class citizens who have almost no power in America in 2024, when they call them racist, it's not because they're trying to call them to some higher meaning. They're not trying to convince them to be more compassionate to their fellow man. They're trying to silence them and shut them up. And when you realize that our leadership is willing to take the compassion, like what's best in us, that we love our fellow man and we love our fellow Americans, and use it as a weapon to silence people, you realize that Kamala Harris and everybody like her, it is a disgusting game that they play, and we have to reject it.
Now, it's not just grocery prices. It's everything is more expensive in this country. Americans cannot afford to live a good life in this country because of Kamala Harris's policies. It's crazy. Now, think about this. Donald Trump and I believe in a very simple principle, that if you work hard and play by the rules, you ought to be able to get ahead in this country that all of us love. Isn't that simple? That is right, man. That is the American dream. And you know, one of the most critical parts of the American dream is being able to afford a home. And right now, thanks to Kamala Harris's policies, homes are skyrocketing. Mortgage interest rates are as high as they've been in a generation. And a lot of young Americans feel like they cannot afford a home in this country. And I think that's disgraceful. One of the reasons why we got to get Donald Trump back in the White House is because we want young Americans to be able to afford to own a stake in this country, and they will when we get Donald Trump back. This immigration and border issue every single day, because I've seen in the small town of Springfield, Ohio, or here in Pennsylvania, there have been cities, small towns that have been overwhelmed with migrants who are brought in by Kamala Harris. And we know exactly the story. We know that it leads to a stress on local services. We know people can't get into hospital or to the doctor's office. We know that schools don't educate children as well. And we know that it means higher housing and higher grocery prices. That's what Kamala Harris's open border does to small towns and big cities all over our country. But here's what really bothers me about it. It's not just that they've made people's lives worse with this terrible open border. It's that they're going to call you bad names if you dare complain about it. And so our message to Kamala Harris and the Democrats is we're going to keep on complaining about your policies because this is America and we have the right to speak our mind. And our message, our message to Kamala Harris is very simple. We are not bad people for thinking that you should not flood millions of illegal aliens into this country. We are not bad people for thinking that the drug cartels shouldn't be allowed to bring fentanyl into our country. You are not a bad person for having the courage to defy Kamala Harris and say no more of this garbage. Kamala Harris is a bad person for letting this happen to our country in the first place.